mid-year budget debate began in the lower chambers. The Prime Minister speaks to inflation, and the Minister of Health speaks out on the Mental Health Act. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Simonet with your JCN News for this Wednesday, March 16th. Debate on the mid-year budget statement kicked off in the House of Assembly this morning with a heated exchange between sitting Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister, as the Prime Minister expressed some concerns regarding 3 programs, including the controversy surrounding the food assistance program. Our Lizzie Bastian has more details in this report.
A heated exchange between Prime Minister Philip Davis and former Prime Minister Dr. Hewitt Minnis in the House of Assembly this morning, as the Prime Minister accused the former Minnis-led administration of using the COVID-19 pandemic to hide spending. Leading off debate on the mid-year budget statement, the nation's chief again criticized the former administration's pre-election report, noting that he is astonished members of the opposition appear to feel no shame or remorse over the fact that their report failed to disclose almost $1 billion in significant liabilities and unfunded obligations of the government, questioning why. What was the purpose of not disclosing those obligations as required by law? The Prime Minister says his administration intends to find answers.
As leader of the opposition, I asked many times I asked for a transparent reporting of pandemic spending. It was never provided. At the start of the pandemic, anti-corruption organizations like Transparency International warned that some governments would seek to use the health emergency to bypass ordinary procurement rules. It would allow them to hide their spending decisions. I drew this to attention on many occasions in opposition. And I regret to say that this has happened here in our own country. Who is getting how much? And for what purpose? And under what terms?
The chair recognizes
there were opportunities for the previous government to do the right thing. To review and explain the health spending.
Now, this didn't sit well with Killarney Member of Parliament Dr. Minnis, who rose on a point of order, charging that if there is suspicion of hidden spending, he urges the government to investigate, and any irregularities or any semblance of corruption, those responsible should be charged, as he is against corruption.
Member said that we are hiding finance or spending. That would imply some degree of corruption. I would suggest that the member do the investigation. If he find any degree of corruption, my position is straight. If he find me guilty, charge me, lock me up. If he find other members, do the same. My position is straight. I am totally anti-corruption. Investigate and let the chips fall where they may. If not, then let's move on and tell the Bahamians what they are about to do about the recession and the cost of living and gas and food expenses that they face today. They want to hear how are you going to you will have a chance to debate.
To that, Prime Minister Davis says there would not be a need for discussion had the former Prime Minister done his job and followed the law. As for 3 specific programs, including the food program, the Parks and Beaches Authority, and the Travel Health Visa program, Prime Minister Davis says there are some commonalities that give great cause for concern, including the fact that in each case they were structured outside the system of accountability in violation of a number of laws, regulations, and sensible good practice. That said, the Prime Minister notes that the Parks and Beaches Authority was effectively being used as a slush fund, with no attempt made to ensure that the services being paid for by Bahamian taxpayers were provided. As for the Travel Health Visa program and the Food Assistance program, Prime Minister Davis says it appears that they did not have the necessary checks and balances. Prime Minister Davis contends that the former Prime Minister oversaw and then obscured spendings and was aggressively incompetent.
Mrs. Susan Hollowesco-Larson, the chairwoman of the National Food Security Task Force, was hired by the government and paid a salary of $7,000 a month and or $1,750 per week. Did we know that? Did anyone expect that? She was given some $53 million to spend. $53 million. But it appears that she was not required to report to anyone on how that money was spent. That's what it appears. In addition to her salary, I wonder if he listened. In addition to her salary, while setting up the program, Mrs. Susan Holovesco-Larson indicated to people on his own call he was also reserving 8% of what was being given to her for administration fees.
Prime Minister Davis questioning whether those running the task force were really paid almost $5 million in administration fees. He says, as Minister of Finance making a mid-year report on the budget, he's ethically bound to report any matters which are likely to affect the performance of the public finances. For JCN News, I'm Lissie Bastian.
Now, the Prime Minister also spoke to climate change, geopolitical turmoil, and global pandemics, noting that there is a need to adapt, to innovate, to grow, to diversify, and to transform, adding that we can't afford to sit still. Prime Minister Davis acknowledging that many Bahamian families are still struggling. 11,000 households are currently receiving food assistance. And East Grand Bahama MP Kwesi Thompson did not hold back in the lower chambers this morning when he told members of the government that their celebration of the country's current economy accomplishments were all due to the former administration, while alleging the government was copying parts of the fiscal strategy report from the Free National Movement. Here's Laurencia Smith with more on that.
East Grand Bahama Member of Parliament Kwesi Thompson was candid with members of the Progressive Liberal Party on Wednesday morning during his contribution to the mid-year budget in the lower chambers. He claims that the country's current economic success are a direct result of the economic policies put in place by the Free National Movement.
The very thing that we celebrate today is as a result of the economic policies of the Free National Movement. The very thing that we celebrate today is as a result of the policies and plans of Mr. Devin. The Prime Minister spoke to how well the recovery is going and how the revenue has improved significantly over the same period last year.
MP Thompson then turned his attention to the fiscal strategy report, which he accused the Davis-Cooper administration of copying several aspects of the FNM's report, some of them including tax compliance measures and legislation reform and tax reform.
Expected that based on the so-called disastrous economic policies of the FNM, we would have seen immediately this government introduced their own new and improved economic policies. Mr. Deputy, would you believe that with all of the talk about our bad economic policies, this government has repeated the same policies and in some cases copying the exact same words from the FNM fiscal strategy report.
Meantime, Mr. Thompson adds this about the fiscal strategy report, which was approved by the cabinet.
In the next fiscal year, beginning July 2022, the government is projecting to decrease compensation to employees by $70 million. After making the promises to the public servants and the unions, we were stunned to learn that the compensation to public servants would be reduced over the next 4 years when compared to now. Is the plan of the government to cut public sector jobs, to cut increments, to cut salaries, to further delay wage increases to public servants, even after the economy revives?
I'm Laurencia Smith for JCN News.
The Mental Health Act will be repealed. This coming from Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Michael Darville ahead of Cabinet on Tuesday. Following the murder of Heavenly Tervius back in February, Dr. Darville did indicate that amendments will be made to the Act. A young mother's suicide last week Thursday and a man arrested here in the capital for shooting at a residence after filming himself doing so has once again sparked outrage on social media with renewed calls for authorities to take mental health seriously in the Bahamas. Asked for an update on that piece of legislation, Dr. Darville says this.
It's out for consultation. It's completed by the AG. The Mental Health Committee, Advisory Committee has finished looking at the bill itself, or the bill, and that will go back to the AG's office, and once it's passed the AG's office, it will come to Cabinet for its final approval, and I am eager to lay that bill in Parliament and debate that bill so that we can address some of the great challenges we have in the country.
He adds that all you have to do is to take a drive down Shirley Street and the issue of mental health is staring you right in the face.
It's very unfortunate with the suicide victim, but she's been crying out for help for years, and our system was not proactive, and our mental health legislation needed immediate improvement so we can find avenues to assist people who find themselves with severe clinical depression, psychiatric illnesses, and individuals who are walking our street just completely out of it. Meanwhile, we're just passing as if everything is okay. It's not okay. And it is the responsibility of a government to respond. And we intend to respond. In short order.
Dr. Darville says the bill itself needed proper consultation, which is now completed. He says he's certain that it will be tabled in Parliament and debated shortly. Due to repeated and excessive unsecured borrowings, the monthly take-home pay for some persons in the public service is around $300. This according to Transport and Housing Minister JoBeth Colby-Davis, who adds that mortgage applications have been declined due to too many existing debt obligations that exceed the recommended central bank debt service limit of 45% of monthly income. She shares this much while delivering her contribution to the mid-year budget debate in the House of Assembly this morning.
To be clear, Deputy Speaker, the intent is not to speak negative of the financial situations of some persons or instruct persons how to spend their salary. However, the ability of the government to deliver houses is negatively impacted by the over $1 billion in unsecured consumer loans owed by Bahamians to various financial institutions. Deputy Speaker, the Department of Housing must provide advice and guidance. This approach is reflective of the relationship-building approach I alluded to earlier.
That said, the Ministry of Transport and Housing intends to launch a home ownership program to equip public servants with financial tips on how to qualify for a mortgage.
By having the Department of Housing conduct this program, the department will be able to not only identify persons for public housing opportunities, but also seek to address serious national concerns. In the budget for 2023, my ministry intends to seek an increase in the capital budget for the Department of Housing for new housing subdivisions in New Providence, Abaco, Grand Bahama, Eleuthera, Andros, Exuma, and wherever else we can find some land to build.
She says that given the great demand for public housing, she and her team recognize the need for the revitalization of the Department of Housing, adding that their focus is to transition the department to a relationship-building, customer-centric format. She also criticized the former administration for not building one home.
And it is a sad fact, Deputy Speaker, that while some of our Caribbean counterparts have opened new public housing subdivisions, we in the Bahamas remain stagnant under the former administration. The need for affordable public housing, Deputy Speaker, has become so great in this country that the demand has far surpassed the current availability of lots.
So far, the ministry has broken ground on 2 housing subdivisions, Pinecrest in New Providence and Central Pines in Abaco. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.